Welcome to Small Steps. My name's Seth Potts, and I want to show you how to calculate z-scores in Excel. So if you're not familiar with what a z-score is, it's a statistical measurement, and it describes a value, specific value you're looking at, its relationship compared to the mean of a group. So it's measured in standard deviations from the mean. That's still kind of convoluted. If you're old enough and unlucky enough to remember, at one point, a lot of times you have classes where you were scored on a bell curve. You see over here, if this picture looks familiar, the bell curve, the idea of that is that instead of being scored on a percentage out of 100% on a test or anything like that, you would essentially be scored against your classmates. So the way they have it here is this zero is the mean. This is the absolute average of all the scores, and one standard deviation above and below is going to be this group that gets a C. I think I fell in that group almost all the time on this class I had that, so I hated it. But yeah, so the 68.2% of kids in your class got a C. And you get above that, 1 to 2 standard deviations above or below, you get a B or a D, and so on and so forth. So, taking this same idea, but not as traumatizing to kids, this is more to something I use in particular to track trends. So, the data that I have over here is just some made up stats, just a count of different types of crimes here for a certain time frame. Now I like doing mine on a trend as far as like a more of a current trend. So you kind of see here, I have the categories. These are what we're going to fill out as the z-score, and then we're going to fill out the average for a 4-week average here, and then a standard deviation. And then I'll show how you put everything together. So what we're looking at here, when I say we're comparing a value compared to the mean of a group. So we're looking at the most recent week. So the last week, this is the number we're looking at. We're going to compare it to the average, so the mean of the prior 4 weeks before that. So we're going to look to see if most recently, if these trends are up or down from the last couple weeks. We find it's a good way in crime analysis to, if you have a lot of data you're going through, and you could set something up like this, and if you're not, it's just something hadn't stood out necessarily on some of these crimes being up or down. This is a good statistical way of saying yes, it's definitely high, it's definitely low, or it feels like it's been high, but it's actually in the norm recently. Things like that. So first thing we're going to do is, like I said, we're going to find the average. That's where we're going to start. So put in this formula here is just average. Turns the average of that. So we're finding the mean, and you can just highlight those four cells there, close parentheses, and we can once again pull that down for all of the other rows there. So first thing, we found the average. Next, we're going to find the standard deviation. So where basically what each standard deviation from the mean is. So start typing equals STD. Depending on your version of Excel, you have quite a few options. The one I use, and if you have an older version, this one will work as well. Whenever you see these with a little warning sign there, it's just a compatibility with Excel 2007 earlier, so you can still use it. That's the one I like to use. So standard deviation, and just like the other one, you're going to do the standard deviation for that group of numbers, the same four you did before. And we have a number that looks like this. So we have our average now, we have our standard deviation for those, and now we're going to build out the z-score. So the formula for that is you start typing in standardize, and it returns a normalized value from the distribution characterized by mean and standard deviation. So it'll walk you through it. So the three parts of it is the value we're looking for. In this case, it is going to be that C2, so the one that's right next to it. That's the value we're going to compare to the mean, which put over here is that 4-week average. And then the standard deviation is going to be that last one we calculated there. And so we have all three parts of this. And click enter. And you see here, it is, this one in particular, it is just under 2 standard deviations below. So the way I typically categorize these is going to be anything from 1 standard deviation below to 1 standard deviation above. So -1 all the way to 1, I would consider normal. That's in the normal range. The 1 to 2 or -1 to -2, I would say is moderately high or low, something to keep an eye on. And anything 2 and above or -2 and below is pretty much an extreme out of the norm. So extremely high or extremely low. So you get those through, and you can kind of see here, taking a quick look at it. If you just had something like this set up, you could look in here and say low, moderately low, moderately high, extremely high. This is one I would definitely check into and see if we could do some analysis and figure out what is causing that number to be so high. Down here, he has some negative, and then another one that's fairly high. So, like I say, if you have something like this, especially if you can automate it, build it out where it tracks that automatically, you could build something like this. It'll show that Z-score, and without having to do a whole lot of digging, you can kind of focus in on what areas, what types of crimes might be high or low. If you found this tutorial helpful and would like to see more, click like and subscribe. The next video coming up is going to be over converting a text timestamp into a time format.